Hey guys, welcome back to another reaction video. All right, today we're returning to chat history, and this is a great subject because it's one of my favorites. It's called Why You Wouldn't Survive in Ancient Greece. So we know life in ancient times was not easy, but I want to see what they got that is uniquely Greek. Our original video is down below. Make sure you're supporting chat history. Give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw here. Let's get started. All right, you see I got my Athens shirt on. I'm ready to go. All right, what do we got? Ocarina of Time. Listen. Ah, Raphael's painting, School of Athens. Listen. Could I do the actually thing here? You guys know this picture? So this is made by the Renaissance painter Raphael, but it is anachronistic because it's called the School of Athens. All these dudes are supposed to be hanging out in Athens. Well, it wasn't Athens because it's got Roman architecture. See those arches in the back? False, Raphael, come on. Who, by the way, also painted himself in the image, which is, if you could see, my mouse is moving around in the bottom right. This dude right here, that is Raphael. He painted himself in there. Why not? Listen. Who's this witch? Who's that supposed to be? Now it's Mario 64?
Yeah, that witch is becoming a real problem. This time, you've been sent into ancient Greece, specifically the classical era.
Animation's getting better.
A time of great war and conflict, but also a remarkable leap forward in human civilization.
By the way, people have asked me a lot if I could go back to a certain time period and witness something or witness a time period in history. The time period I would do is about the 50 years or so, kind of the Athenian golden age between the Peloponnesian War and the Persian Wars. I want to see what the hubbub was all about and how many misconceptions they have. I want to meet all these guys. I want to meet Pericles and the whole gang.
So, can you survive one of humanity's greatest expansions? Or will ancient Greece thermop the floor with you? Let's find out.
There's a gymnasium.
Greece's classical period began in 510 BC when Athens fell and broke its Hippias, and ended in 323 BC when Alexander was no longer great. As an act of kindness, you've been sent.
Well, Philip, his father, took over Athens, and then he's gonna, keep going forward, of course. Alexander, that is.
To the funny year. But there's nothing funny about needing.
Wait, what?
As an act of kindness, you've been sent to the funny year. But there's nothing funny about needing to survive. The first thing you need to do is dust yourself off and get your bearings. Maybe a sign or something will help. Well, that's no
Greek.
use. You quickly recall your.
It is one of the oldest languages, though, that we still use commonly, Greek. It's how we were able to translate with the Rosetta Stone hieroglyphics, because Greek was around back when they were still using hieroglyphics.
Vast knowledge acquired from countless hours on GeoGuessr and look around for some notable landmarks. After all, some of these buildings still exist in the modern day. Well, there's a familiar sight right over there on the horizon.
Those ruins.
The Acropolis of Athens.
There it is.
That's in Athens. I must be in Athens. Well, now you know where you are, which
Athena,
means you can start figuring out your next steps for survival.
Look, it's the thing. They're showing the owl.
But first, you need someone to talk to because you're gonna need help. There's never any shame in asking for help. That guy over there seems friendly enough.
Yeah.
Although shorter, the dude is absolutely ripped from his labor-intensive chores and looks like he could kill you in one punch. But you approach him anyway. Told you. Now let's assume he's a bit more approachable this time. You begin to ask him a question, but like a monolingual American, you always forget that there are other languages out there besides the freedom one. But you try your best. Here it goes.
Right. Lame ones.
Hey man.
By the way, the Greeks called everybody pretty much that did not speak Greek as the barbaroi, or barbarian as we derive from it. They looked down upon those people.
Can you help me out here? The man turns his chiseled jaw your way and begins to speak, quickly bombarding you with a bunch of indiscernible mouth sounds that completely fry your brain. But luckily, the words have been displayed in a big old bubble next to his head. Look at all them silly letters. Wait a minute, you say, scratching your chin. I've seen these letters before. Just then, you get a flashback to your college girlfriend's sorority dorm where you found the Euclidean letters, just as you were finding her Euclidean. Don't kid yourself. You were doing math.
Whoa!
You goober.
Where'd that come from?
Unfortunately, you come to the realization that knowing just a few letters doesn't mean jack shit in terms of understanding a whole language. Now, some of you modern Greeks out there might lift your hairy arms and say, "Ha, I can speak Greek. I'd survive." Well, you're wrong. Ancient Greek is completely different from modern Greek, with completely different tones, vocal inflections, and pronunciations across several regional dialects. Ancient Greeks wouldn't understand a word of modern Greek, so you'd have no real advantage. Needless to say,
Kind of like Old English versus like modern English. Like, what?
you're not going to be communicating anytime soon, at least not orally. You begin attempting some charades as a way to express your needs. Too bad all of your wacky waving is perceived as a threat. Man, that's twice. Since you just insulted a random citizen and are an obvious outsider, you're arrested and sold into slavery. Looks like you've been slammed to the bottom of the societal barrel.
No.
But what did you expect? Speaking of society,
Thing is, Athens was more open to foreigners than a lot of city-states because they understood the value of trade. A good percentage of Athens, I'm trying to remember the exact percentage, probably a quarter maybe, were probably not born in Athens. Forget the exact stat.
like any society in history, ancient Greece operated under a hierarchy. Since you just got dunked into classical Athens, let's focus on that. Here, there were four main groups. The upper class were the elite, the cream of the crop, and we all know that the cream rises to the top. To be a part of the upper class was a birthright. You must have been born in Athens to a moderately or highly wealthy family.
Now, aristocracy often refers to landowners. In this context, he's probably using, you could probably also throw in the oligarchs, which are basically your wealthy business owners, which was a huge deal in Athens because Athens was a trading city. A lot of the agricultural city-states were, you know, places that Athens would have to trade with. But yeah, land ownership, of course, anywhere in Greece is a big deal because it's very mountainous, it's very arid. So owning land actually made you very powerful. But being a business owner, especially, was in Athens, higher position than probably anything.
And be well educated. And a guy. The members of this class were the
You had to
only
be
ones
male.
that held any political power and the only ones classified as citizens. That being the case,
More to it, you had to be male, above 30. You had to be native born in Athens, and you could not be a slave. Slaves were a third of the society in Athens. So only about 15% of people that actually live in Athens get to participate in the democratic process.
the upper class controlled all social and economic policies as well as law. As a democracy, 500 citizens were chosen at random each year to run the government, given complete control over the proposal of new policies.
Random,
and
by the
laws.
way.
Kind of like an
It was super corrupt. Their democracy was super corrupt.
given complete control over the proposal of new policies and laws, kind of like an oligarchy. These policies were either accepted or rejected by popular vote. Next was the middle class, usually referred to as the medics. They were all the dudes who weren't born in Athens
Foreigners.
but still lived there. Foreign skilled laborers such as craftsmen, merchants, and artists. These guys built ships, constructed buildings, and kept the city maintained.
Pericles, you know, the statesman of that time, his right-hand woman, Aspasia, would be considered a metique because she was not born there, although she was a woman and a foreigner, exerted a lot of power that really was a pretty massive exception. By the way, this is all totally opposite of Sparta. Sparta, they're not going to do foreigners. That's not going to be their thing. They want it to be totally self-sufficient with Spartans.
Sure, they didn't have a lot of rights like the ability to own land or vote in governmental affairs, but they were the core of the Greek economy. You know, a thing that barely exists today. Oh yeah, women were also part of the middle class. Not many rights outside of being in charge of the house and raising the kids. Ancient Greek society wasn't too fair to women. The lower class, or the freedmen, were exactly who you think they were.
Yeah.
Come on. It's right there in the name.
Free laborers.
They were freed men, former slaves who bought their own freedom through intensive labor and saving. They pulled themselves up by their sandal straps and worked hard their whole life, only to have little to no rights or place in society. But hey, at least they aren't smelly slaves anymore. Slaves were lower than dirt in the societal hierarchy and weren't even considered a class. They were usually captured prisoners of war or purchased from former traders.
Yep.
Slaves were either owned by families as house servants or by the government outright for general labor, which came in all kinds of flavors. Farmers, bankers, soldiers, employed friends with benefits, police, all kinds of stuff.
So if you're wondering, like, man, Athens didn't sound very democratic, but to an Athenian, it does sound democratic because they would have a case for all of these out groups for why they shouldn't participate. If they were foreigners, then they believed they wouldn't have Athens' best interest at their heart. Women, because, well, there is some sexism involved in that, but the male is supposed to kind of be the political spokesperson for their household. And then obviously with slaves, because they have a very different set of circumstances that I'm sure they would like to change if they were able to participate in the democratic process. But again, it was about 15% of people that lived in Athens actually participated in the democratic process at all.
Imagine being arrested by a slave. Sir, you have the right to remain silent. Huh, well, at least I have rights.
Oh no.
Slaves made up about a third of the population and were an absolute gold mine for their owners.
Yep.
Profit margins are pretty healthy when you don't have to pay them much. Or at all. Speaking
Mining,
of gold mines, that's where
agriculture.
you're headed. Time to get branded and get a move on.
That's one thing, we were talking about how Greece isn't going to be an agricultural hub, but mining was great. And they would trade basically for agricultural products with their neighbors because not too far. They could trade with Mesopotamia. They could trade with the Egyptians with the Nile. Although I guess you could throw in, they had the olives and of course the wine. That was definitely a consumable product that the rest of the Mediterranean world loved, which was Greek wine. Ow! Subscribe.
You're swiftly carted off to join a group of miners so large it would cause a YouTube elite to start sweating.
Oh man, looks like all the cool slaves have been sent to the surface mine to get gold and silver. But since your mining level sucks, you get to go underground for some cuprum. That's copper. Working in a mine was brutal.
Did anyone else get Skyrim vibes, when you have to go in and become basically the slave miner when you go to Markoth, right? And you meet the guy that's the leader of the Forsworn. It's like, all right, here's your forever underground labor. Ugh.
Slaves are subjected to intense labor all day, working in poorly ventilated and swelteringly hot cave systems hundreds of feet deep in the earth, illuminated only by dim oil lamps. You can't see shit, which means your fellow slaves can't see jack shit, so watch out for rogue pickaxes. You toil away day in and day out for a while.
You think modern mining's
but notice
bad?
That, like the rock around you, you're getting chiseled. The combination of your new Mediterranean diet and constant physical exertion is starting to pay off. You're able to mine more efficiently,
very lean.
and you're outperforming your coworkers. Thanks to all of your hard work and dedication, the local mine supervisor rewards you with more backbreaking work. Looks like you gotta add your pride to the list of things getting crushed
This
around
is so
these
well
parts.
animated, by the
You're
way.
working hard and gaining some gains.
funny way.
But you need to start finding a way out of here soon. You see, the life expectancy for miners was only a few years. With hazards like coal dust, lead exposure, and cave-ins, it was a quick way to have your lifespan get completely rocked.
Like, you think about how difficult it is today, and you hear about cave-ins with modern equipment, but ancient times, it's a death sentence.
Ah, jeez. Looks like Atticus is showing signs of a fever. And Pucus over there? He's earning his namesake. You ask your buddy Atlas what the heck's going on, to which he responds, looks like they all caught some sort of...
Disease, man. The great
No matter
population
where you throw a dart on
equalizer.
the board of history, diseases were always in the spotlight. Perhaps the most common in classical Greek times were smallpox, influenza, and measles.
These, especially smallpox and measles, are going to come from being in proximity to domesticated animals like cows and pigs. That's why you're not going to see smallpox and measles indigenously or something like that in the Americas, where they did not have that close interaction with large domesticated animals. It's also why, those diseases end up wiping those people out when Europeans start showing up.
Luckily for you, your parents love you and got you vaccinated when you were just a wee babby,
Nope.
right?
Of course, otherwise you'd look like this. But ancient Greeks weren't so lucky.
It was pretty common for outbreaks to be spontaneous and run rampant, killing off people by the thousands.
The plague broke out in that same time at the end of the Peloponnesian War. I believe that's what Pericles died by. But yeah, plague broke out when Athens and Sparta were fighting each other.
And what
And
kind
Athens
of disease
loses that war.
discussion would it be without the mention of the plague? Yeah, the plague showed up in ancient Athens right around 430 BC, 10 years before you arrived. During that time, it eradicated between 75 to 100,000 people,
Greekaroos.
or about a quarter of the city's population. The plague comes in 3 flavors: bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic. And strawberry.
I don't know much about septicemic. Does that have to do with being spread through like the other bodily fluids. Bubonic, you're going to have to be in contact. Pneumonic is when it goes airborne. It gets be able to pretty much hitch a ride on microscopic breath particles, and that was super deadly. That's like 100% death rate if you catch that form of it.
They're all basically the same thing, but affect you in different ways. Bubonic was the most common, as it's kind of stage 1 of the plague. Usually
that's the one, by the way, where you're talking about, like, we talk about the plague in the Middle Ages, the rats, and you can, through like blood and things like that, fleas on the rats specifically.
From a flea giving you a little nibble, the plague is a bacterial infection that just penetrates your cells and fills them with toxins, killing them. This will also cause you to have a fever, the chills, and make you generally feel like shit. Your body will also start getting polluted with bumpy boils. If left untreated, the infection can spread to your blood, where it upgrades to septicemic plague. This is when parts of your body get the rot and start to turn black, causing severe pain as well as more frequent, unprovoked traffic stops. If the infection gets into your lungs, that's when it's classified as pneumonic plague. You begin coughing like crazy, and your respiratory system starts to fail. And that's no good. Luckily, doctors at the time relied less on the big guys in the sky for help and decided to take matters into their own hands.
You have to look at the science here about how they treated plague. I don't know specifically with Greece, but in the Middle Ages, they did a lot of things that ended up making it worse, like bloodletting.
Establishing and developing the concept and decided to take matters into their own hands.
Best thing to do is quarantine.
Developing the concept of medical treatment. It was widely believed that the key to a healthy life was to consume healthy foods like fruits, veggies, nuts, meats, and dairy. Not to mention plenty of exercise.
Sure.
Crazy thought, right? But if you did get the ick, there were a few solutions. The most common was bloodletting. Look, you're just a big walking...
The stupid people in Europe in the Middle Ages did the same thing. Letting the blood out just spreads the germs.
Blood sac. And since you're sick, that means you've got... time to get rid of that. Thanks, Doc. I feel so... Other treatments were often natural remedies like herbs, soups, teas, and honey to heal your little stomach.
That's more, with that stuff, it doesn't cure the disease. It just maybe helps you with the symptoms. By the way, those herbs and stuff is why those plague masks you think about in the medieval times was used for. The big, beak. They would put, spices and flowers and stuff like that with the doctor, for the plague doctor, and they thought that could, possibly ward off, two things, possibly ward off the plague, but also people were also really gross and stinky, especially when they had the plague, so maybe it just is better for smelling.
But anyway, you're safe because you're vaccinated, which means that you're the sole survivor of a recent outbreak, and you really like trains. Guess you're a free man now. Being very free and very man means that you now have access to education. Sorry, ladies.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey was so good.
Wait a while before you learn good. Time to hit the books.
I want to play again. Education. All right, they're gonna get boys. Girls didn't get access to education, but education quite prevalent for young boys. With such a advanced culture when it comes to economics that like Athens had, there's a lot of really skilled positions educationally that were required.
Now that your yearning for the mines is now a yearning for learning, it's time to trade your physical gains for mental ones. Ancient Greece had a wealth of educational resources, including public and private schools, personal tutors, intellectual lectures, and a recent invention.
Tutors were especially common if you were wealthy. Alexander the Great was famous for, his father Philip getting Aristotle, probably the most famous educator in the Greek world at that time, as his personal tutor.
Books. Books started showing up around the 5th century. It was a great way to record down your stories and lectures without having to memorize them. But some pretentious Greek geeks like the famed philosopher Socrates believed that books would be the downfall of society, as people would just write things down rather than commit knowledge to memory.
But exactly. It's so weird because no, this is how we transfer knowledge and how you have it more accurate. But Socrates' thing was books weren't fun to him because Socrates was the dude that went out in public and annoyed everybody by proposing moral dilemmas. And again, it rubbed people the wrong way. It's like you loved him or you hated him. Of course, a lot of people hated him because he ends up by trial being forced to commit game over.
But imagine this. If you wanted to learn a story or a bit of information,
game over himself.
You had to catch Rheticus on a Tuesday afternoon next to a fountain in the park, but you showed up a little bit late and missed half the story.
Late for class?
Can you rewind like 10 minutes, please?
Found a really good Euro spot. You want some?
McDonald's. You
attend several lectures and slowly learn to read and write the local dialect,
I love Euros.
Attic Greek. Not to be confused with basement Greek. Although they were rare, you managed to find a small public library to see if there's anything interesting, when something catches your eye.
Greek yogurt and you. How to kill witches.
No way.
You got a star. Mario. And a treasure chest. From Zelda.
What's
back?
Yes. Like I said, I'd survive.
Final thoughts. All right, delightful little video there from Chat History. I was glad I was able to talk a lot about this because this stuff is very interesting to me and very fun to teach. I can get across, I think, a lot of fun points to my students when talking about this. And anytime that can happen, you know, I love that. It makes teaching so much more fun. All right, you guys, again, if you like this video, the original's down below. Make sure you give it a view, like. If you like what's going on here as well, just subscribe to my channel. Go down below. You'll see in the Discord as well as a place where you can chat with yours truly as well and give those video suggestions. All right, we'll see y'all next time.